Sometimes, 1 second is enough to make an entire studio fall silent. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but full heavy with anticipation, trembling with the possibility that something unforgettable is about to happen. The lights are already warm. The audience has settled into their seats, smiles ready, laughter prepared on instinct. This is fast money, after all. A familiar ritual, a game measured in seconds and surveys, buzzers and guesses. Nothing more than television. Until it isn't. An 82-year-old grandmother stands at the podium, hands folded neatly in front of her, shoulders slightly stooped not from weakness, but from time. Her hair is silver, carefully brushed, catching the studio lights like threads of moonlight. She looks smaller than the stage, almost fragile against the bold colors and towering screens. No one expects miracles from her. Not really. Expectations are gentle at this age, softened by affection. The audience offers polite applause, the kind reserved for someone you admire more for being there than for what they might do. Steve Harvey glances at her, smiling, ready with encouragement. He has seen thousands of contestants step into this moment. Nervous young adults, confident parents, loud uncles, shaking teenagers. He knows the rhythm. He knows how this usually goes. But something about her gives him pause. Maybe it's the calm in her eyes. Not the calm of someone who doesn't care, but the calm of someone who has already lived through storms louder than any buzzer. She isn't trying to prove anything. She isn't chasing a spotlight. She is simply present. Fully. Completely. The clock waits. The board glows. The audience leans in. Fast money begins. At first, it feels normal. A question. A beat. Her answer comes quickly clear. Certain. Without apology. The board lights up. The score jumps higher than expected. A ripple moves through the crowd. Surprise. Mild but noticeable. Steve Harvey raises his eyebrows, playful disbelief dancing across his face. Another question. Another answer. The rhythm shifts. Her voice doesn't shake. Her words don't wander. Each response lands with quiet precision, like memories drawn from a lifetime of listening, loving, observing. The score climbs again. Higher now, the audience murmurs. Laughter flickers, then fades into something else, attention sharpened by awe. Steve Harvey steps back slightly, hands on his hips, watching not as a host, but as a witness. He has hosted Fast Money hundreds of times, maybe thousands. He knows what the numbers usually look like. He knows how rare perfection is. He knows how unforgiving the clock can be. And yet, here she is. You can feel it now, can't you? That tightening in the chest. That sense that the rules everyone thought they understood are quietly being rewritten. Another question lands. The seconds tick away, each one loud in the hush. She answers without hesitation, as if the clock has slowed just for her. As if time, out of respect, has decided not to rush someone who has already earned her pace. The board reveals the score. The audience gasps, no longer politely, no longer cautiously. This is real now. This is something else entirely. Steve Harvey looks at the numbers, then at her, then back at the board, his mouth slightly open. He shakes his head, not laughing, not joking, just stunned. The kind of stunned that strips away performance. By the final question, the studio is barely breathing. The clock runs out. The total flashes on the screen. 200 points. Impossible. Unthinkable. A perfect fast money round, delivered not by speed or bravado, but by an 82-year-old grandmother who stood on that stage like she had been preparing her entire life for this exact moment. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then, everything erupts. Applause crashes forward like a wave. People stand. Some cheer. Some cry. Steve Harvey bends forward, hands on his knees, overcome not by the game, but by the meaning of what just happened. This was more than a record, more than television history. This was proof that brilliance does not expire, that life does not narrow, it deepens. That sometimes, the most extraordinary moments arrive quietly, wrapped in age and grace, waiting for the world to remember how to look. And standing there, beneath the lights, with the audience roaring around her, the grandmother smiles softly, as if to say she knew all along. The applause lingers longer than usual, refusing to fade on cue. It rolls through the studio in waves, bouncing off walls that have seen countless victories but never one quite like this. The grandmother stands there, hands still folded, a little unsure where to place them now that the moment has exploded beyond anything she expected. Her smile is small, almost shy, as if she's embarrassed by the attention, as if the world has suddenly become much louder than she prefers. Steve Harvey walks toward her slowly, not with his usual comedic swagger, but with reverence. He looks at the board again, as though it might change if he stares long enough. 200 points. Perfect. The number glows like a promise fulfilled. He asks her name, and when she answers, it carries the softness of a lifetime spent speaking gently. There is nothing performative about her voice. It is steady, familiar, the kind of voice that once called children in from the yard at dusk, that soothed fevers in the middle of the night, that whispered prayers when no one else was listening. The audience begins to settle, but their energy has shifted. They are no longer spectators. They are participants in something tender. Steve Harvey leans in, lowering his voice, asking how she did it. She laughs lightly, a sound like wind through leaves, and shrugs. There is no secret formula, she says, just listening, paying attention. Living long enough to learn what people mean when they answer questions, not just what they say. And in that simple explanation, a truth unfolds. This woman has lived 8 decades not rushing to be heard, but taking time to understand. She has watched trends rise and fall, wars begin and end, families fracture and heal. She has buried friends, celebrated births, endured quiet losses no one ever applauded. Her life has been a long conversation with the world, and fast money, in its strange way, has finally asked her the right questions. The camera cuts to her family in the audience. They are on their feet, tears streaking down their faces, hands pressed to their mouths in disbelief. A daughter clutches her chest. A grandson shakes his head, laughing and crying at once. They know what the world is only beginning to see, that this woman has always been remarkable, that her wisdom has been hiding in plain sight, folded into ordinary days. Steve Harvey listens as she speaks about them. About raising children with little money but endless love. About working jobs that never came with titles or trophies. About learning early that survival often depends on kindness and patience more than cleverness. Each word lands gently, but its weight is undeniable. For a moment, the game disappears entirely. The studio lights soften. The music fades. The audience leans in closer, as if afraid to miss a syllable. Steve Harvey nods slowly, absorbing not just her story, but what it represents. He has spent his career lifting voices, but this is different. This is a reminder that the people we rush past, the elders we underestimate, carry entire libraries of understanding within them. That age is not a decline, but an accumulation. You can feel it now, the warmth spreading through the room, the shift from astonishment to gratitude, from shock to something like reverence. Steve Harvey reaches for her hand, careful, respectful. He thanks her not for winning, but for showing everyone what is possible when a life is fully lived. His voice cracks just slightly, enough to betray how deeply this moment has touched him. The audience quiets again, not because they're told to, but because they want to, because this feels sacred, because laughter and applause would be too small. She squeezes his hand back, eyes shining, and in that exchange, brief, human, unguarded, something larger than a record settles into place. This wasn't about 200 points. It was about being seen. Seen not as an age, not as a novelty, but as a person whose life experience had just rewritten what excellence looks like under studio lights. And as the cameras pull back, as the audience rises once more, there is a shared understanding moving through the room. Some moments don't belong to television alone. They belong to everyone who has ever wondered if their time has passed. Here, on this stage, time stood up and proved it still mattered. The celebration continues, but it has softened now, transforming from thunderous applause into something more intimate. The grandmother is guided gently to the side as the show transitions, yet the energy refuses to reset. People whisper to one another, eyes still damp, hearts still racing. The moment has already slipped beyond control, becoming something no script could contain. Steve Harvey watches her carefully as she sits, smoothing the fabric of her dress, posture calm, unhurried. She is not overwhelmed, she is grounded. As if she has stepped into the spotlight, not to be changed by it, but to change it. When fast money resumes its usual rhythm, it feels almost surreal. The questions sound smaller now, the laughter thinner. Everyone knows they have just witnessed an outlier, an interruption in the ordinary flow of television where something profoundly human broke through. During a brief pause, Steve Harvey steps closer again. He asks about her life, not for time, but because curiosity has taken hold. She speaks of mornings that begin early, even now, of hands that still know how to knead dough without measuring, of a house filled with photographs that tell stories no one ever wrote down. She speaks of love that lasted and love that left, of lessons learned not from books, but from paying attention when life whispered instead of shouted. The audience listens differently now. No one checks their phone. No one shifts impatiently in their seat. This is not nostalgia packaged for entertainment. This is testimony quiet, earned, and offered without demand. Steve Harvey's humor flickers in and out, but it never takes over. He senses the line and stays behind it. He understands that laughter, in moments like this, should arrive as relief, not deflection. He nods often, eyes warm, absorbing every word like a student who knows he's being taught something that won't appear on any syllabus. At one point, he asks her if she was nervous. She pauses, considering the question. Then she smiles and says, "No, not because she isn't afraid of failing, but because she's already failed enough times in life to know it doesn't end you." The audience exhales as one. There it is, the sentence that lands heavier than the perfect score, the wisdom that cannot be measured by points. Steve Harvey straightens, visibly moved. He repeats her words slowly, letting them settle into the room. Failure doesn't end you. Not when you've lived long enough to see how many beginnings hide inside endings. You can feel tears welling again, not from sadness, but from recognition. Everyone in that studio has failed at something. Everyone has wondered if they were finished. And here stands proof that life is not a race toward perfection. It is a long conversation with resilience. The grandmother's family joins her on stage. They embrace her carefully, as if afraid the moment might shatter if they hold it too tightly. She pats their backs, soothing them as much as they soothe her. This has always been her role. Anchor, center, quiet strength. Steve Harvey steps back, giving them space, but his eyes glisten. He has spent decades commanding rooms, yet here he is willingly becoming smaller, letting someone else fill the space with meaning. It is a rare and generous instinct. The music swells briefly, then fades. The cameras capture faces in the crowd, young and old, diverse, united by a shared emotional current. This is not about age-defying expectation. It is about humanity being reminded of itself. When the segment finally draws to a close, it feels inadequate to simply move on. But television must continue. Schedules must be kept. Still, something lingers as the lights adjust and the show carries forward. An invisible thread now connects everyone who witnessed it. Backstage, as the grandmother is guided away, crew members stop to thank her. Some hug her. Some simply hold her hand for a moment longer than necessary. They feel it too that they have been part of something rare. Steve Harvey watches her disappear down the hallway, then turns back toward the stage, chest tight. He knows this moment will live far beyond today's taping. He knows it will be replayed, shared, celebrated. But more importantly, he knows it will quietly sit with people later, in moments when they doubt their worth. The board will reset, the lights will dim, the episode will end. But the truth revealed here about age, wisdom, and the strength that grows with time will not fade. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary turning points arrive not with noise, but with grace. Time moves differently after a moment like that. Not faster, not slower, just deeper. As if the air itself has learned to hold meaning a little longer. When the cameras stop rolling, the studio doesn't immediately empty. People linger, reluctant to let go. Conversations begin softly, strangers speaking to one another with the familiarity of those who have just shared something intimate. Crew members remove microphones and adjust lights, but their movements are gentler now, careful not to disturb what still hangs in the room. The grandmother sits quietly in a chair near the edge of the stage, a warm shawl placed around her shoulders. She didn't ask for it. Someone simply noticed the chill. Her hands rest in her lap, veins visible, steady. These hands have worked their whole lives. They have held babies and bills, tools and prayers. They have known fatigue and purpose in equal measure. Steve Harvey joins her again, this time without a microphone, without an audience expecting a punchline. He pulls a chair closer and sits at her level. The shift is subtle, but intentional. No hierarchy, just two people sharing a moment that has outgrown its setting. He thanks her not for the record, but for the reminder. He tells her the show has seen talent, speed, cleverness. But what she brought was something rarer, depth, the kind that doesn't shout to be noticed. She listens, nodding slowly. Praise has never been her currency. She accepts his words the way she accepts everything else in life, with gratitude, but without clinging. She tells him she almost didn't come. The trip felt long. The stage felt intimidating. At her age, people often tell you to rest, to stay home, to leave excitement to the young. But her family insisted. Not because they wanted her to win, but because they wanted her to be seen. Steve Harvey's eyes soften. He understands that ache. The fear of becoming invisible. The quiet erosion that comes when the world assumes your best chapters are behind you. She speaks of that fear plainly, without bitterness. Of how aging slowly teaches you which voices grow quieter and which grow louder. Of how the world begins to rush past, and how easy it is to let yourself step aside. She says she came not to prove anything, but to remind herself she still belonged in the noise. And she did. Steve Harvey tells her she didn't just belong, she led. That for a few minutes, she guided an entire room back to something essential. To patience, to listening, to the truth that wisdom doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates through living. The grandmother smiles, eyes shining. She says wisdom isn't something you notice while you're earning it. It sneaks up on you. You look back one day and realize all the hard moments didn't break you. They shaped you into someone who knows how to answer when life asks difficult questions. The words settle between them like a benediction. Around them, the studio feels different now, less like a workplace, more like a sanctuary. People pass by quietly, respectful, as if crossing sacred ground. No one rushes her. No one urges her to move on. Time has slowed out of courtesy. Her family gathers again, wrapping her in careful embraces. There is laughter through tears, pride without pressure, love without expectation. She strokes their hair the way she always has, anchoring them, even now, even here. Steve Harvey stands, placing a gentle hand over his heart. He tells her this moment will inspire people who think it's too late, people who believe their time is past. He says she has no idea how many hearts she has just reached. She answers simply that if even one person feels braver tomorrow, it was worth the trip. That is when the healing becomes visible, not dramatic, not loud, just real. The kind that spreads quietly from one person to another. The kind that reminds everyone present that being seen can mend something we didn't realize was broken. As she prepares to leave, Steve Harvey walks her toward the exit. Not as a host escorting a contestant, but as a son might walk beside a matriarch, careful, grateful. He opens the door for her, and light from the hallway spills in, soft and forgiving. She pauses, turns back, and thanks him for listening. Steve Harvey nods, unable to speak for a moment, because in listening, he has been changed too. The door closes gently behind her, and the studio, once loud with applause, now holds a quieter truth, that healing doesn't always come from grand gestures. Sometimes it arrives in the form of an elderly woman, answering questions with the accumulated grace of a lifetime, reminding the world that no season of life is without purpose. Long after the episode airs, the moment begins its second life. It travels first through screens shared in clips, slowed down, replayed with captions that struggle to name what people felt. Viewers stop mid-scroll. Some smile, some wipe their eyes. Many sit a little straighter, struck by a feeling they didn't expect from a game show. It isn't amazement at the score anymore. It's recognition. For many watching at home, the impact is immediate and personal. Elderly parents are called that night, conversations lingering longer than usual. Grandparents are hugged tighter the next visit. People realize how rarely they ask the oldest voices in their lives what they think, how often wisdom is assumed to be outdated instead of accumulated. Messages begin to pour into the show. Not about strategy or records, but about memories. A man writes about his grandmother who raised him after his parents died, how she never thought of herself as special. A woman shares that she almost canceled her college plans to care for her aging mother, until that moment reminded her that strength does not diminish with age, it transforms. Teachers play the clip in classrooms. Caregivers play it in nursing homes, where residents laugh, cheer, and nod knowingly. Teachers play the clip in classrooms. Caregivers play it in nursing homes, where residents laugh, cheer, and nod knowingly. The grandmother becomes something she never sought to be, a symbol, not of defying age, but of honoring it. Steve Harvey reads these messages quietly, often late at night, phone glowing in the dark. He understands now why the moment stayed with him. It wasn't just rare television. It was a correction. A reminder that society's obsession with youth has caused it to overlook the depth sitting patiently in its midst. He speaks about her gently in later interviews, careful not to turn her into a spectacle. He doesn't emphasize the record. He emphasizes the presence, the calm. The way the room changed when people slowed down long enough to really see her. The grandmother returns home to a life that looks much the same as before. Morning routines, familiar rooms, a chair by the window. But something has shifted around her. Neighbors stop by more often. Strangers write letters. Children ask her questions and listen to the answers. She receives invitations, she politely declines. Fame was never the goal. What she keeps instead are the conversations. The quiet satisfaction of knowing her life spoke when given the chance. For her family, the moment becomes a touchstone, a reminder that the woman they loved had always been extraordinary even when no one was watching. They tell her story at gatherings, not as bragging, but as gratitude, proof that love and patience, practiced daily, can one day echo far beyond a living room. And for viewers, millions of them, the legacy settles in slowly. They begin to see elders differently, to ask more questions, to listen longer, to understand that wisdom is not loud, not rushed, not optimized for speed. It arrives with pauses, with kindness, with answers shaped by decades of paying attention. The record may one day be broken. Numbers usually are. But the feeling won't be, because what happened on that stage was never about perfection. It was about presence, about dignity, about the quiet power of a life that has endured, adapted, and loved deeply enough to know what truly matters. Steve Harvey often returns to that moment in his mind, not when the applause peaked, but when the room fell silent. When everyone sensed, at the same time, that they were witnessing something sacred, something real. Sometimes, television doesn't just entertain, it heals. Steve Harvey often returns to that moment in his mind, not when the applause peaked, but when the room fell silent. When everyone sensed, at the same time, that they were witnessing something sacred, something real. Sometimes, television doesn't just entertain, it heals. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share so the world never forgets moments like these. This is Stories Left Behind, where human stories are never lost.